Anna.
I'm Jessica. And this is the Paranoia Pair.
So, I am going to be covering a highly controversial case that probably, well, there's no probably, it does spark a lot of debate today. And that's the murder of Caylee Anthony.
I've never actually heard anyone who was on Caylee Anthony's side.
People nowadays are like on her side. Like when she came back to the internet and was making those videos being like, go to my Substack, I'm going to be a legal advocate. People were like rallying behind her. And I was so surprised. Like, did y'all forget what she did?
I've never heard a single person, I've never talked to anybody who's ever been on her side. It's always,
I haven't either.
I thought we all just universally hated her.
That's what I thought. Apparently not.
That's wild.
Okay. So Caylee Marie Anthony was born on August 9th, 2005. And she lived with her mother, Caylee Anthony, and her grandparents, George Anthony, and he was an ex-cop, and Cindy Anthony, who was a nurse, and they lived in Orlando, Florida. All I know about Orlando is Disneyland, or is it Disney World? I don't know the difference between the two, besides one's in California and one's in Florida.
I think Disneyland. I've never been to one, though.
I think Disneyland is Florida. Disney World is California.
That makes sense because California is kind of like bigger, like popular, more popular.
On July 15th, 2008, Cindy and George received a notice in the mail about Casey's Pontiac Sunfire. Do you know what that is?
I do because I had one.
Okay. I was about to show a picture to you.
One of the few vehicles I'm actually aware of.
Yes. I actually got a Mustang and a Camaro mixed up the other day and I felt real embarrassed about it. You're not alone.
I got a Camaro and a Trans Am. No. Trans Am, I think.
Pontiac Trans Am?
Maybe that's what it is. I got those mixed up once and I bought it because I thought it was a Trans Am, but it was a Camaro.
I don't even know what a Trans Am is besides Pontiac Trans Am.
I think that's the wrong.
Trans to me is transmission. What is Am? It's real awake.
It was one, now it's new. I don't know. It was I thought it was an older one. Hang on,
I remember I really wanted a one of those IROCs. Yeah, that's a Pontiac Trans Am.
Yeah, but see what it looked like, and then I thought, but then I seen this, and I thought that was a Trans Am, and so I bought it.
Yeah,
but it was a Camaro. Well, okay, when I bought it, I knew it was a Camaro. When I first seen it, I thought it was a Trans Am. So then I bought a Camaro, and
I mean, it still looks cool.
It gave me 2 good years, but it died. His name was Steven.
His transmission was not that away.
Yeah. I don't remember what it was.
You actually bought the PM version. It's a little sleepy. So they received a notice in the mail about Casey's Pontiac Sunfire that she had left abandoned in a parking lot of an Amscot financial services company. And basically it's just a place a lot of people would go to cash their checks.
Okay.
The car was left there for several days and it had not been claimed, so it was then towed and impounded on June 30th and racked up a $500 impound bill. And when they would go pick this car up, it would lead to 3 different 911 calls. The first call was Cindy reporting that her daughter Casey had stolen her car and some money, and so this basically was made to report Casey for theft. The second call was when Cindy called 911 again, this time to report that her 2-year-old granddaughter Caylee had been missing for 31 days. And she mentioned that Casey had given several different explanations for Caylee's absence, including that she was with a nanny named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
I don't have any grandkids, but it would take me a lot less than 30-something days of not seeing them to call the police.
The third call was Cindy expressing her desperation and fear, stating that it smelled like there had been a dead body in her car. Um, so this obviously was like urgent. Like if I listened to the last one because it was part of the documentary that I watched, and she was like freaking the fuck out. Um, so when police arrived to the Anthony residence on July 15th, they questioned Casey about the whereabouts of her daughter. They asked Casey when the last time she saw Caylee was and the events leading up to her disappearance. Casey claimed that she had dropped Caylee off with a nanny named Zanita Fernandez Gonzalez, aka Zanny the nanny. That's what she's going to be referred to.
It's got a ring to it.
Mm-hmm. And she had dropped her off June 16th before she went to work at Universal Studios. And apparently she worked there as a event planner. When Casey returned to the apartment later that day to pick up Caylee, nobody was there. She made several phone calls and text messages to the nanny, but the number was out of service. She had gone to parks and other common places that they probably would be going to, like in the area, to see if they had gone there. So Casey's solution to not finding Caylee or being able to contact the nanny was to go to her boyfriend's house because she didn't want to be embarrassed by going to her parents' house without knowing where Caylee was, because obviously they would question her about it. So the police questioned Casey about her activities and whereabouts during the 31 days that Caylee was missing, and she says she stayed with her boyfriend the entire time and that she didn't call police because she was afraid the nanny would hurt Caylee.
The boyfriend isn't the dad, right?
Correct.
Do we know who Caylee's dad is?
No, Casey doesn't even know who the dad is.
Okay.
There's suspicions on who the dad is, but it's never confirmed.
Okay.
July 16th, 2008, the day after Cindy reported Caylee missing, police had taken Casey to the apartment of the supposed nanny. And that's at Sawgrass Apartments in Orlando. When they arrived, the detective knocked on the door and nobody answered. He looked into the window of the apartment and it was fucking empty. They checked the records and the apartment had been vacant for over 140 days and there was no evidence that Zanita Fernandez Gonzalez had even lived in the entire building. So there's like statistics that come out like about missing children cases. Like the first 48 hours are crucial. So the police are like, we need to like get the ball running on this. Because Caylee had been missing for 31 days. And the longer a child remains missing, the more likelihood of finding the child safely decreases. And so the police asked the media for help in gathering any potential leads and tips. And it also helped raise awareness, like keeping people on the lookout and everything about like any possible information or sightings. Detectives arranged to have Casey take them to Universal to meet with Casey's supervisor and to meet with the two coworkers Casey says she told about Caylee's disappearance. The detectives already know that the supervisor and the two coworkers either don't exist or no longer work there. They get to the building. The security guard tells them that they don't have any employee named Caylee Anthony. Casey turns to the detectives and says, No, I work here. She then gives the guard the name of her supervisor and even their extension number. And she's told that those names and number are not in the system. So, by pure fucking luck, there is another supervisor who is walking by and he tells the guard to let them in. When they get into the building, Casey starts to wave at employees passing them, and they all look confused, like they have no idea who she is. And Casey leads the detectives down a dead end hallway. She turns to them and she tells them she doesn't actually work there. And so they're hoping that they kind of backed her into a corner, per se, and that she's actually going to tell the truth because the detectives are convinced, hey, this lady's lying, so she must know where she is. They take her into an empty room and they question her further. During this interview, Caylee says that her daughter had been kidnapped by the nanny. She keeps insisting this, despite the mounting evidence that this is completely false. Police speculate that she knows where her daughter is and that she's safe because of Casey's attitude. She's like not even acting a little bit concerned about it. Um, she in fact seems more concerned with her mother's reaction instead of her missing daughter. The police then arrest Caylee and they charge her with child neglect, hoping there would kind of force her hand to try to get out of the charges by saying, I am not neglecting my daughter. She's actually here and she's safe. That doesn't happen though. Caylee gets one phone call and she ends up calling her mother. On the phone call, Casey's agitated and is giving her mother attitude. Cindy asks Caylee, well, whose fault is it that you're sitting in jail? And Caylee responds by saying, it's not mine. Caylee keeps asking for her boyfriend Tony's number and thinking that maybe he's involved because she's so persistent. The police are looking into Tony. They show up at his apartment, and both Tony and his roommate are like more than cooperative. They're both surprised and concerned when learning about Caylee's disappearance because Caylee didn't mention anything about her daughter missing to them.
That's wild.
During the 31 days she was at the apartment. At the beginning of the relationship, Caylee would always bring Caylee over, but starting in June, Caylee would come over without Caylee, telling them that she was either with her parents or the nanny. While searching through the case files, the police come upon the third 911 call because for whatever fucking reason, the police weren't made aware that this phone call had even happened. And it's the phone call about the smell coming from Casey's car. So the police move quickly to confiscate the car. The car in the entire 2-car garage smelled like decomposition. And they brought in a cadaver dog, and the dog alerted to the trunk of Casey's car. When they opened the trunk, it had been vacuumed, but there was a stain along with several hairs that had made them realize they might be investigating a murder case instead of a missing child. When they interview Cindy at the police station about the car and her 911 calls, she says that when they picked up the car, they aired it out and that there was a bag of garbage in the trunk and that the smell was supposedly rotten pizza in the car. George has a conversation with the police saying that he got bad vibes when he went to pick up the car, but he doesn't want to believe that he raised someone who could do something like harm a child.
Doesn't okay, I might be jumping ahead. Doesn't Caylee Anthony try to say that her dad sexually abused her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought so, that she like tried to start putting the blame on him.
After talking to the police, Casey's parents go to visit her in jail. So George tells Caylee that she can tell him anything, that he wishes he could take away her pain. Then Cindy takes the phone and says that they aren't doing well and that someone said that Caylee was dead that morning. So they're hearing rumors about Caylee being dead. And you want to know what this bitch says about her daughter?
I feel like she's
possibly
like,
being dead.
I think she's like, no, it's whatever.
Surprise, surprise. So Caylee then makes the conversation about her and how she's struggling because she's been in jail for a month. Caylee then says that she's aware that the visit is being recorded, and because of this, she has things that she needs to say to her parents individually in private. Basically saying, I have something I need to tell you, but I don't want it recorded, so it can't incriminate me. With nothing else to go on, the police continue looking for the nanny, and they actually find someone named Zenaida Gonzalez. They bring her in for questioning about Caylee and Caylee. Caylee's been keeping her distance from the police, especially since she's been in jail, and she hired a lawyer that was recommended to her by a fellow inmate. The parents were putting up missing persons posters, and they even got a private investigator named Dominic Casey that was hired to help search for Caylee. And he put together search parties in the area. He was actually hired by Casey's attorney. Around the same time, because Florida has really strong public record laws. Basically, anything that's gathered like in like criminal case or anything, it's public knowledge. That's why you see like so many crazy Florida man stories. It's because of the public record laws that they have. These records are now being released on the news and the story's like blowing up. So the recorded visits Casey had with her parents and the 911 calls that were made Casey basically the most hated person in America, which valid. Casey makes bond and people are pissed.
Who's paying? You always hear these people that do these absolutely like horrific crimes and they're like, oh, they made bond. Who's paying $10,000 to get someone? I don't even have $10,000 for important
I
things.
actually get into who paid these. So, um, people were showing up to the Anthony home and they were shouting at them, and it was absolute chaos. The case became a media sensation. There was extensive coverage on TV, social media, and even news outlets. And public opinion overwhelmingly believed that Casey was guilty, and the trial hasn't even began. So Casey was actually released on bond 2 times. The first time was August 21st, 2008, after a California bounty hunter paid her $500,000 bond. She was rearrested a little more than a week later on August 29th for check fraud charges.
Why would a bounty hunter pay a bond?
I don't know. After Caylee's disappearance, Casey had stole checks from her friend Amy Hunzenga, and Casey used Amy's checks to buy over $400 worth of clothing, groceries, and other items from places like Target and Winn-Dixie.
What?
Winn-Dixie.
Never heard of it.
It's kind of like our Chiefs or like Kroger, but it's like the southern version. Okay. So the fraudulent transactions occurred in July of 2008 while the search for Caylee was ongoing. Casey was again released on September 5th, 2008 after her parents had posted her bond.
Fuck that. If my child lost my grandchild.
I know. On October 14th, 2008, Casey was indicted by a grand jury for first-degree murder in Caylee's death. She was arrested that same day and held without bond. Thank God, because she's already been released twice. The police finally got the hair and carpet samples back from the trunk of Casey's car, and they felt that they had enough evidence to charge her with murder. And it's actually incredibly hard to convict without a body, though, so this was like it's kind of high risk because you can't do double jeopardy. So if she's found not guilty, they can't charge her again.
Right.
But just a few months later, on December 11th, 2008, a utility worker discovered skeletal remains in a wooded area near the Anthony home in Orlando, Florida. The remains were found off of Suburban Drive, less than half a mile from the Anthony's family home. The body was badly decomposed, and only skeletal remains were left. The skull was found inside of a trash bag, along with other bones, a canvas bag, and a Winnie the Pooh blanket. There were also bones scattered throughout the wooded area because of animal scavenging. There was duct tape wrapped around the skull's mouth area, leading prosecutors to argue that she was suffocated.
That's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like dehumanizing your child.
The medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of death, but ruled it as a homicide by undetermined means. Because she's fucking 2 years old. On December 19th, a press conference was held where it was confirmed that the skeletal remains were 2-year-old Caylee Anthony. Police secure a search warrant for the house. Upon searching the home, they find Caylee's bedroom was Winnie the Pooh themed.
Mm.
And a canvas bag that was found with the body matched a canvas laundry bag found at the home, and they were sold at a local grocery store in pairs. So one was at the crime scene, the other one was at home. All of the evidence the police had was pointing towards Casey being responsible. On May 9th, 2011, the court began the jury selection, but because of the media coverage, it was highly difficult, and they had to bring in people from out of the area to come to Orlando where the trial would be held. People were camping overnight to be selected. They were arriving as early as 2 o'clock in the morning to get one of the 50 seats available each day. So each day they would only interview 50 people. People were arguing and they were fist fighting. They were fist fighting each other in line. And as soon as the doors would open, people were pushing and shoving and running down the hall to the door where they were doing the interview. They had to call the cops. The cops had to come
I'm
because
surprised
it was so chaotic.
I'm surprised they even let people be there because of how publicized the whole thing was.
They did end up picking 12 jurors who had very little knowledge about the case, or they just made it seem like they had very little knowledge about the case.
Just find old people who don't have social media or the news.
The prosecution wasted no time in laying out their theory. Caylee Anthony had murdered Caylee and then partied like nothing had happened. They pointed out Caylee was lying about Caylee's whereabouts for 31 days and never reported her missing. They emphasized how Caylee went out clubbing, participated in a hot body contest, and got a Bella Vita tattoo, meaning beautiful life, all while Caylee was missing. The prosecution argued that Caylee used duct tape to suffocate Caylee and that the duct tape was found covering Caylee's skull and mouth. So it actually was like wrapped around like towards the back of her head. They claimed Caylee wanted to be free from motherhood so she could live a carefree lifestyle without responsibility.
There's literally so many people that would adopt your baby.
And they even played an interview with one of Caylee's friends from school saying Caylee wanted to give her daughter up for adoption, but her mother told her she wasn't allowed to.
She was an adult. She could do that if she wanted to.
Yeah, she was 19.
Okay, she can do that if she wants.
They pointed to the internet searches on the Anthony family computer, including chloroform, neck breaking, and how to make chloroform. They stated the smell in Caylee's trunk was the unmistakable odor of human decomposition. They even introduced air sample tests that allegedly detected decomposition and traces of chloroform, which I think was actually pretty interesting. So what they did was they basically took the samples from the car and they made it kind of like the air vaporized around it. So they like condensed the air, and then they took the sample and then they put it in a little test thingy that told them all the different levels of scientific shit that I can't tell you exactly because I'm not that smart, but I thought it was really interesting. Their closing statement was, "This is not a case about accidental drowning. This is not about a case of family tragedy. This is about a mother who killed her child."
And what's making this even harder to listen to is I'm pretty sure that I know that she doesn't actually get convicted of this. So that's what's making this all the more aggravating is that it was right there in plain sight.
Yeah. Caylee's defense attorney had shocked the courtroom with his opening statement, claiming that Caylee had accidentally drowned in the family's swimming pool on June 16th, 2008. He stated that George Anthony, Caylee's father, had found Caylee's body and helped cover up the death and really painted him to be the villain.
If she drowned, why did she need duct tape wrapped around her skull?
Exactly. He went as far as accusing George of sexually abusing Caylee from a young age, which led her to become a compulsive liar. He claimed Caylee had been conditioned to hide the truth out of fear and that Caylee did not murder Caylee, that her lying and partying were a result of her trauma and emotional detachment from years of abuse. He argued that Caylee never reported Caylee missing because George had convinced her to keep it quiet. He began attacking the forensic evidence and claiming the prosecution's evidence was weak, unreliable, claimed that there was really no way to tell that it was actually decomposition smell coming from the trunk. He also claimed the police were too focused on proving Caylee's guilt and ignored other possible explanations. He says that Caylee did not kill Caylee. Caylee drowned in the pool, and George covered it up. And when George is called up to the stand to be a witness, Caylee's attorney doesn't bring up the sexual abuse claims. What he does bring up is George had attempted suicide after he found out Caylee's body was found.
Makes sense. It's a pretty plausible reaction when you find out your only grandchild's dead.
On January 22nd, 2009, George was found unconscious after overdosing on pills and alcohol in a Daytona Beach hotel room. He had sent a goodbye text to his family and friends saying he no longer wanted to live. They found him in his room with a 5-page suicide note. He wrote about feeling guilty for not being able to protect Caylee. He said he wanted to be reunited with Caylee and asked for forgiveness from his family. Jose Baez was Casey's attorney, and he suggested that George's suicide attempt was due to guilt, implying that he had helped cover up Caylee's death and he couldn't live with the secret any longer. But George had been cooperative with the investigation, and he never admitted to anything in the letters or the interviews. Not to mention, Cindy called 911 about the smell in Casey's car. Dr. Arpad Vass, who was a renowned forensic anthropologist, he was also a decomposition expert, testified that the hair found in the trunk had features that could only come from a body that was in a state of decomposition. Dr. Voss also showed that the trunk contained high levels of chloroform, which was a chemical commonly used to sedate and incapacitate someone. And Google searches on Casey's computer in March of 2008 were how to make chloroform, and how to make homemade tranquilizer. The defense challenged the link between the chloroform and the crime, saying that it was basically circumstantial evidence. Cindy testified, saying that she believed the smell in the car was from a bag of garbage that was in Casey's trunk that she didn't really think was from a dead body. She also says that on the 911 call, she only said that it smelled like a dead body to get police to respond. She also testified that she was responsible for the Google searches on the computer. And she supposedly clicked chloroform because she was searching for chlorophyll.
The thing in plants?
Yeah.
How to make chlorophyll?
Well, because I guess they had like bamboo in the yard or something, and her dogs were like eating it or something. She was worried about her dogs.
But you're not going to be Googling chlorophyll itself. You're going to be Googling, can dogs eat bamboo?
Yeah. Work records show that Cindy was at work when those searches happened. And Cindy said that the work records could have been wrong, apparently. So despite the overwhelming evidence against Casey, including the chloroform traces in the trunk of her car, the Google searches, the decomposition smell, the hair samples, the jury found her not guilty of first-degree murder.
How? How? It's right. It's right there.
I don't know.
There's so much.
The prosecution presented testimony that suggested premeditation and a deliberate attempt to conceal the crime, including
neck snapping.
Yeah. Including the use of chloroform to subdue her daughter, Caylee's remains being found near the car, and the duct tape found on Caylee's skull. However, the defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was not enough proof to convict Casey. And that's because the defense doesn't actually have to prove anything. They don't have to prove anything, they just have to create enough doubt. Despite the strong case against her, the jury found her not guilty on all charges except lying to the police, which she got time served plus an extra 10 days. So she had to serve an extra 10 days in jail for lying to the police. That's fucking insane to me. And apparently it was insane to everyone else outside the courtroom because people were outraged. The social media, the news outlets, and online forums were flooded with disappointment and outrage, with many questioning the jury's decision and expressing their belief that justice had not been served for Caylee. There were even protests, and jurors were getting death threats. The prosecution really missed out on further evidence because with the Public Information Act, the contents of everything that was on the Anthony family's computer was made public, and a guy requested a hard copy of the computer drive, and there was search history for foolproof suffocation that was made on a different internet browser that the computer analyst had just missed somehow. That's the term. Foolproof suffocation was searched on this computer.
You don't just like wake up one day and you're like, I'm really curious about this for no reason at all.
After her acquittal, Caylee was sentenced to probation for check fraud charges related to stolen checks that she took from Amy, her friend, but she was released from jail and she was not required to serve additional time. Zenaida Gonzalez had filed a civil lawsuit against Caylee, saying that Caylee Anthony had defamed her by naming her as the kidnapper of Caylee during the investigation. She argued that the false accusation led to damage to her reputation and emotional distress, which, I mean, valid. But the fucking case was dismissed. The judge ruled that there was no valid evidence of defamatory actions when she was telling everyone she was the person who kidnapped her
Yeah,
child.
I'd be pretty pissed about that. And it's not like you literally have a Jane Doe name. I mean,
Yeah, I know. It's Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
yeah,
How many people have that name?
that's a
I've
pretty
never heard of someone being named Zenaida.
no. That's a pretty. Everyone's gonna notice you.
That's very specific.
Yeah.
So there was also a lawsuit by Roy Kronk, the utility worker who discovered Caylee's body in the wooded area. He also filed a defamation lawsuit against Caylee, alleging that Caylee had falsely implicated him in the abduction of Caylee and even claimed that she had attacked his character in her defense statements. Because during Caylee Anthony's murder trial, her defense attorney, Jose Baez, made statements suggesting that Roy, the utility worker who found Caylee's body, had probably maybe been involved in the crime. He described Roy as morally bankrupt and implied that his discovery of the remains was suspicious. The lawsuit was settled in 2017 after years of legal battles, and details about the settlement are not publicly disclosed, though, which I think is crazy because Public Information Act.
How could anyone defend? Like how that Jose guy could defend her blows my mind.
I don't know. Well, we're actually gonna get into it a little bit.
Was she banging him? Oh, makes sense.
Allegedly. Okay. So Caylee filed for bankruptcy, citing almost $800,000 in liabilities, including legal fees and other debts. When the documents were released, something crazy was discovered. The private investigator, the man who was hired by Casey's own attorney, same guy from earlier, Dominic Casey, he claimed Jose was in control of Caylee and that she was very compliant with him. He also described inappropriate behavior between Caylee and her lawyer. On one occasion, Baez set up an interview for Caylee with the media, and she had changed her mind. So Jose had to cancel. And Jose supposedly said to Caylee, "You now owe me 3 blowjobs."
What the fuck?
He says the relation between the two had escalated and that he had witnessed Caylee naked at the law office after showing up unexpectedly. Dominic told Caylee that she couldn't continue engaging in this behavior. Caylee told him that she had no choice because she didn't have any money to pay him. He also claims that when he was hired to find Caylee's body, he came up with the pool theory himself after going to the Anthony's home to see the ladder was set up with it was set up and left in the pool. And that's because supposedly he he knew the general area of where Caylee's body was, and he was supposed to be the one who found it first. And he was informed, supposedly, that Caylee was no longer alive and that they needed to find something to put doubt in the jury's mind. George thinks that Caylee had been giving Caylee drugs so that she would sleep, and notes that there were times when Caylee would sleep 13 to 14 hours, and that she also had dark circles under her eyes. One of Caylee's former friends also believes that's the case, especially with the name Zanny the Nanny, thinking that thinking that the babysitter was actually Xanax. They both believe that she had drugged her daughter in an attempt to get her to sleep, and that she had given her too much, and that she had died. There was actually a law that was introduced in memory of Caylee to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, and it's called Caylee's Law. It varies by state, but generally it makes it so parents or legal guardians who fail to report a child is missing within a certain time frame, or they lie and provide false information, they can face felony charges. The states that have Caylee's Law, for example, just to name a few, is Florida, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, and North Carolina.
Why would they not? Why do not Why wouldn't every state just jump on that?
I know. I think there are, like, a total of 11. I feel like that should just be a thing.
You
Like,
think
why
that
isn't that a thing already?
everyone yeah. I don't really think there's an excuse to not report your child missing,
Mhm.
so
Well, I mean, it's to make it so you have to.
right, that's what I mean, like, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to push
Yeah.
for them to have to
Mhm.
I don't know.
I guess they just didn't think that it would be something that would happen, I guess. I don't know. Apparently, it is. So Caylee Anthony has also established a presence on social media where she continues to engage with the public. She's rumored to have fake accounts to stay anonymous online, and some believe she could still be monitoring her public image through social platforms. This has sparked a horde of people outraged, and surprisingly, she also has people who are supporting her. Her decision to speak out about her life following the trial has angered many people who basically see her being like, what was me? I'm gonna soak up like as much attention as I can. Um, so the statements that basically people are most upset with are about her moving on and finding peace. Casey had an interview with the Associated Press. In this interview, she says she is still not 100% sure what happened to Caylee. Um, Weird because her defense in court was that she had drowned in a swimming pool. And, the whole time that the investigation was happening, she had said that Zany the nanny had kidnapped her. So she's not 100% sure, but she was basically put out these two things that she was so gung ho and was adamant that was the truth about what happened.
It just shows she's a narcissist
Mhm.
because I feel like if somebody had been accused of their child's murder and they genuinely, if they didn't do it, I feel like they would fall, like they would try to live the most quiet, non-existent life.
Mhm.
And then the fact that she's trying to bring herself back in the spotlight just kind of shows the narcissism of needing to be in the limelight.
Yeah. So here comes the third story that she says is what happened. She says all she remembers is being in bed and her mom saying bye to her before she went to work. She woke up from a 2-hour nap and that's when she noticed Caylee was gone. She just woke up and Caylee was gone. So recently Caylee Anthony has made headlines once again by resurfacing online promoting her Substack account where she claims she's going to be working as a legal advocate.
Sorry, what's a Substack account?
Substack is like it's kinda like news.
Okay.
It's like independent news publishers, like
Okay.
independent journalists, and they post on there, and, some people believe she's exploiting her infamy to gain financial support and rebuild her public image.
That's what it sounds like.
Mhm. Yeah. She's, really capitalizing on a second chance at visibility in the media regardless of the digital angry mob with pitchforks that are coming at her.
Does her and her dad have a relationship?
No, so her father has completely cut contact with her, but, her mother, she still talks to her mom, like, every once in a while, not very frequently, it's just a phone call randomly here and there. She does give off only child energy, but she does have a brother.
Would have never known she had a sibling. Was he older or younger?
I believe older.
Would have never known.
No, especially because her mom definitely, like, babied her. Her mom was like, "She was, like, my best friend," and then it, like, cuts to Casey, like, cussing her out. And the roommate actually, like, says that Casey was, like, a great mom.
Well, yeah, that picture of her with Caylee looks so sweet. Like,
Yeah, he says that, Casey was a loving, attentive mother for her child.
yeah, I would have thought seeing that picture that she definitely loved her baby
Yeah,
because
that's why they were so surprised that she had gone missing. Because Casey was out acting like nothing had happened.
fuck Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.
Bye.